My mother-in-law left my 8-month-old mixed-race baby alone in an 85-degree room for hours. While babysitting, I found out she was part of an online hate group called Grandparents for Genetic Preservation and had been planning to call CPS to report us for neglect. After getting a restraining order, she started driving by our daycare daily, sending photos of our daughter taken with a telephoto lens, and created a full nursery in a secret rental house with my husband's photos but none of me. When they say blood is thicker than water, they clearly never met my mother-in-law Eleanor. I'm Japanese-American, while my husband Michael is textbook WAS, blonde, blue-eyed, from old Connecticut money. We dated for 5 years without a hint of family drama until we announced my pregnancy. Everyone was ecstatic, except Eleanor. When I reached out to hug her, she stiffened and muttered, "Well, I suppose these things happen." When I asked what she meant, she forced a smile and said, "Nothing, dear, just thinking about the baby's future challenges." Michael shut that down immediately, but the damage was done. Throughout my pregnancy, Eleanor would send articles about identity confusion in mixed-race children and studies about higher rates of behavioral problems. We limited contact, but she always found ways, through Michael's sister, through concern for my health, through gifts that came with pamphlets tucked inside. When Emma was born, she was perfect. Michael's delicate features, my dark hair, and these gorgeous hazel eyes that changed color in the light. Eleanor visited once at the hospital, held Emma for exactly 30 seconds, then claimed she felt faint and left. For 8 months, we kept distance. Then Eleanor started therapy, or so she claimed. She wrote Michael a long letter about confronting her unconscious biases and begging for another chance. She seemed genuine, started sending appropriate gifts, asking about Japanese traditions she could honor. After 3 months of this, we cautiously allowed supervised visits. The change was remarkable. Eleanor doted on Emma, learned to make her favorite foods, even bought children's books in Japanese. By Emma's first birthday, we'd relaxed enough to let her babysit occasionally, never more than a few hours, always during the day. The night everything went wrong started with my cousin's wedding in Portland. We debated bringing Emma, but Eleanor insisted, "You two need time together. I've raised 3 children, remember?" She arrived early, helped pack Emma's bag, even brought homemade baby food. We left at 4 p.m. for the evening wedding. Eleanor sent photos every hour. Emma playing, eating dinner, splashing in the bath. The last one came at 8:30. Emma sleeping peacefully in her crib. We relaxed, enjoyed the reception, planned to be home by midnight. At 10:47, my phone rang. Our neighbor, Sarah. "Hey, just wanted to check. Is everything okay? I saw Eleanor's car leave about an hour ago, but I can still hear Emma crying." My blood turned to ice. I called Eleanor, straight to voicemail. Called again, nothing. Michael was already pulling up the car as I kept hitting redial. The drive home was a blur of panic. I called 911, barely coherent, explaining our baby was alone. Our neighbor could hear her crying. The babysitter had left. They dispatched immediately. We arrived to find police already there. Emma was in her crib, soaked in sweat, diaper full, screaming herself hoarse. She'd been alone for at least 2 hours. Her water bottle was empty. The room was stifling. Eleanor had turned the heat up to 85 degrees and closed all the windows. While I held Emma, trying to calm her, Michael searched the house. Eleanor's purse was gone, but she'd left something behind. Her iPad, still logged into her email. What we found destroyed us. For months, Eleanor had been part of an online group called Grandparents for Genetic Preservation. The messages were vile. She'd been posting photos of Emma with captions like, "Look what my son did to our bloodline," and "How to protect the family legacy when it's already too late." The night she left Emma alone, the group was having an in-person meeting, a support group for grandparents dealing with racial dilution in their families. Eleanor had been asking for advice on how to document neglect to build a custody case. Someone suggested she create situations that would make us look unfit. Her plan was horrifying. Leave Emma alone but safe in her crib. Wait for us to come home hammered from the wedding. Call in a concern to CPS about finding Emma neglected. She'd been building a paper trail for months. Photos taken at angles to make our clean house look messy. Recordings of Emma crying, all babies cry, labeled as constant distress. Even a log of concerning incidents that were completely fabricated. She'd returned to our house at midnight, planning to discover us hammered and Emma abandoned. But we'd come home early. The police found her parked 3 blocks away, waiting. CPS did investigate. They had to give in her report. But our neighbor's testimony, the doorbell camera footage showing Eleanor leaving, and her own digital trail cleared us immediately. Instead, Eleanor was charged with child endangerment and filing a false report. Eleanor got probation and a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of Emma, but that doesn't stop her. Because every day I see her car driving slowly past Emma's daycare. The full story is on my channel, linked below. The restraining order might as well have been toilet paper for all the good it did. Every morning at 8:15, Eleanor's silver Mercedes would cruise past Little Sprouts daycare, slowing just enough for me to see her staring through the tinted windows. The police couldn't do anything without proof she was violating the 500-foot rule. She'd clearly measured the distance. I started taking photos with my phone, documenting each drive-by. Michael installed a dash cam in my car, angled to capture the street. We were building our own paper trail now, learning from Eleanor's playbook. The daycare director, Mrs. Chen, noticed too. She quietly moved Emma's play area to the back of the building, away from street view. 3 weeks after the restraining order, things escalated. I arrived at daycare to find a gift on my windshield, a manila envelope tucked under the wiper. No return address, but I recognized Eleanor's handwriting on my name. Inside were printouts from parenting blogs about the importance of cultural consistency and mixed children's identity struggles. Yellow highlighter marked passages about higher sewer slide rates and behavioral problems. At the bottom, a handwritten note, still thinking of Emma's future. Michael wanted to take it straight to the police. I convinced him to wait. We needed more. Eleanor was too smart to leave fingerprints or anything traceable. The stationery was generic, sold at any office store. Even her handwriting could be disputed. We photocopied everything and locked the originals in our safe. The next incident happened at Target. I was shopping with Emma when I felt eyes on me. That prickly sensation at the back of your neck. I turned to see Eleanor at the end of the aisle, pretending going to examine baby formula. She was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, but I knew that posture, that way she held her shoulders. When our eyes met, she didn't run. She smiled. I grabbed Emma and left immediately, abandoning my half-full cart. In the parking lot, my hands shook so badly I could barely buckle Emma's car seat. Eleanor's car wasn't in the lot. She must have had someone drop her off. Planning ahead. Always planning. That night, Michael's sister Stephanie called. She tried to sound casual, asking about Emma, about our schedules. Then she mentioned their mom was really struggling, and maybe we could work something out privately. When Michael pressed her, she admitted Eleanor had been calling daily, sobbing about missing her granddaughter. Stephanie felt caught in the middle. We started varying our routines, different routes to daycare, random schedule changes. I worked from home more often. Michael's father, who'd been silent through everything, finally called. He didn't defend Eleanor, but he asked if we were being perhaps too harsh. His wife was going through something, and couldn't we show a little grace? Michael hung up on him. The breaking point came through our baby monitor. We'd upgraded to a smart camera after everything happened, one that sent alerts for sound and motion. One night, the alert went off at 2 a.m. Emma was sleeping peacefully, but something had triggered the motion sensor. I checked the footage. For 3 seconds, a red laser dot had danced across Emma's wall, like someone pointing a laser pointer from outside. Michael ran outside while I stayed with Emma. He found nothing, but our neighbor's security camera caught a figure in dark clothing walking away from our property. Too grainy to identify, but the timing was perfect. The message was clear. Eleanor could reach us whenever she wanted. We filed another police report. The officer seemed sympathetic, but explained that without concrete proof it was Eleanor, their hands were tied. A laser pointer wasn't a weapon. No crime had been committed. He suggested we upgrade our security system, as if we hadn't already turned our home into a fortress. I stopped sleeping. Every noise made me jump. I'd check on Emma 5-6 times a night. Michael installed more cameras, motion sensor lights, even a smart doorbell that recorded everyone who approached. Our house looked like a paranoid person's compound. Maybe we were paranoid. Maybe that's what Eleanor wanted. My mother flew in from California. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd lost until I saw myself through her eyes. She moved into our guest room, providing another set of eyes and ears. More importantly, she gave us hope. This woman, she said, studying Eleanor's emails, is escalating because she's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. She was right. The mistake came in the form of a FedEx package. Return address was a law firm in Hartford. Inside, official-looking documents about grandparent visitation rights and best interests of the child. The cover letter, signed by Eleanor, discussed her concerns about our parenting and her right to a relationship with Emma. She'd CC'd Michael's entire extended family, except Eleanor had made one crucial error. The law firm? It didn't exist. The address was real, but it housed a dental office. The letterhead was fake, probably made on her computer. The documents cited laws incorrectly, mixed up statutes from different states. She'd tried to make it look official to scare us or convince the family we were being unreasonable. Michael's cousin, a paralegal, confirmed what we suspected. The whole thing was fabricated. More importantly, it was mail fraud, a federal crime. We finally had something concrete, but Eleanor wasn't done. 2 days later, Emma's daycare called. A woman claiming to be my sister had phoned, saying there was a family emergency and she needed to pick up Emma. The daycare followed protocol, asking for the safety code word we'd established. The woman hung up immediately. They traced the call to a burner phone purchased with cash. We pulled Emma out of daycare immediately. My mother watched her while we worked. Every day brought new stress. Michael's jaw was constantly clenched. I jumped at shadows. Emma thankfully remained oblivious, babbling happily and taking her first wobbling steps between furniture. Then Michael's Aunt Patricia called. She'd been at a family gathering where Eleanor had too much wine and started talking about how Emma would be better off without my influence, how she had plans to ensure her granddaughter grew up properly, how she knew people who could help make that happen. Patricia was horrified enough to warn us. We hired a lawyer, not for custody. Eleanor had no grounds, but for documentation. Every incident, every contact, every violation got filed properly. The lawyer, Ms. Rodriguez, had seen this before. Extinction burst, she called it. When someone loses control, they often escalate dramatically before giving up. Document everything. Be ready. Eleanor's next move was subtler. Flowers started arriving at my office. Beautiful arrangements with cards reading, "Thinking of you," and "For Emma's future." No signature, but the florist confirmed they were paid for in cash by an elderly woman matching Eleanor's description. Co-workers thought I had a secret admirer. I knew better. The flowers went straight into the trash, but not before I photographed each one. The cards went into our evidence file. Ms. Rodriguez added them to the harassment documentation. "She's trying to remind you she's watching," she explained. Classic intimidation tactic. Michael's brother James finally broke ranks. He showed up at our door one evening looking exhausted. Eleanor had been calling him daily, trying to recruit him to her cause. She'd offered to pay for a private investigator to dig up dirt on me. When he refused, she'd accused him of betraying the family. He brought recordings of the calls. Eleanor's voice, usually so controlled, sounded unhinged. We were building a case, but at what cost? Emma had started having separation anxiety, clinging to me whenever I tried to leave. Michael was grinding his teeth in his sleep. My mother extended her stay indefinitely. We were living under siege, and Eleanor hadn't even technically broken the law since the restraining order. She'd just skirted the edges. The daycare drive-bys continued. The flowers kept coming. Strange cars parked on our street for hours. Our doorbell camera caught people photographing our house. When confronted, they claimed to be real estate investors or bird watchers, always with plausible excuses, always when Eleanor had solid alibis. Michael's family started dividing. Some believed Eleanor needed help. Others thought we were overreacting. Thanksgiving became a battleground of loyalty tests. We didn't attend, instead having a quiet dinner with my mother and Emma. Eleanor posted old family photos on Facebook with captions about remembering better times and families torn apart. I found myself checking locks obsessively, testing window latches, watching mirrors when driving to spot following cars. This wasn't how I'd imagined motherhood. Instead of planning playdates and milestone celebrations, celebrations, I was documenting stalking incidents and meeting with lawyers. The investigation into the fake legal documents was moving slowly. Mail fraud required federal involvement, and they had bigger cases. Our local police were sympathetic but overwhelmed. The restraining order was just paper if Eleanor stayed technically outside its boundaries. We were trapped in a horrible waiting game. One morning, I found Emma's favorite stuffed elephant on our front porch, the one she'd lost at the park a week earlier. No note, but the message was clear. Eleanor had been watching us at the park, had been close enough to retrieve a toy without us noticing. The violation made my skin crawl. That night, Michael and I made a decision. We couldn't keep living in fear, waiting for Eleanor's next move. We needed to take control. Ms. Rodriguez had mentioned something about documenting patterns for a stronger case. It was time to stop playing defense. We were done being victims in Eleanor's twisted game. Our daughter deserved better. We deserved better. And somewhere out there, Eleanor was planning her next move, unaware that we were finally ready to fight back. I installed a tracking app on my phone and gave Michael access. We established check-in protocols every 2 hours. My mother started accompanying me on errands, her presence both comforting and heartbreaking. This wasn't the grandmother experience she'd imagined either. The first sign of Eleanor's new strategy appeared through social media. A Facebook account under the name Concerned Grandma started commenting on parenting groups I belonged to. The comments were subtle at first, questioning whether mixed-race children needed special considerations, and sharing articles about identity confusion. The profile picture was generic, but the writing style was unmistakably Eleanor's. I screenshot everything before the comments mysteriously disappeared. Eleanor was learning to cover her tracks better. The account vanished within hours of my discovery, but not before I documented dozens of posts targeting mothers in mixed marriages. Michael discovered the next piece while reviewing our credit reports. Someone had been making soft inquiries using his social security number. The attempts were clumsy, clearly fishing for financial information. We froze our credit immediately and filed fraud alerts. The timing wasn't coincidental. My mother noticed a pattern in our mail. Certain pieces arrived opened and resealed. Bills, bank statements, anything that might contain personal information showed signs of tampering. We installed a locking mailbox and started having sensitive documents sent to my office. The psychological warfare intensified when I found a photo tucked under my windshield wiper at work. It showed Emma at the park, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. On the back, written in Eleanor's distinctive script, she looks just like Michael at that age. The implication was clear. She was claiming Emma as exclusively her son's child, erasing my contribution entirely. Security footage from my office building showed a woman in a large hat and sunglasses placing something on my car. The build and gait matched Eleanor, but the disguise made positive identification impossible. Another dead end for law enforcement. Michael's cousin called with disturbing news. Eleanor had been reaching out to extended family members, spinning tales about our instability and Emma's concerning development. She claimed I was isolating Michael from his family and filling Emma's head with confusing cultural messages. Some relatives bought it. We started receiving anonymous calls to our landline, heavy breathing, then disconnection. The calls came at precise times, right when we'd normally be putting Emma to bed or sitting down to dinner. Eleanor knew our routines too well. I discovered she'd been volunteering at the library's children's reading hour, the same library where we'd taken Emma for baby music classes. The librarian mentioned how sweet it was that Emma's grandmother was so interested in early childhood development. My stomach churned. Michael confronted Stephanie about her continued contact with Eleanor. The conversation revealed Eleanor had been promising financial incentives, help with Stephanie's student loans, a down payment for a house, in exchange for information about our schedules and Emma's activities. Stephanie swore she'd never accepted, but the doubt was planted. Our neighbor mentioned seeing someone matching Eleanor's description walking a small dog past our house regularly. Eleanor didn't own a dog. When questioned, she'd apparently borrowed one from a friend as cover for her surveillance, always staying just outside the restraining order's boundaries. The fake social media accounts multiplied. Grandma's Rights 1952, Family First Eleanor, Concerned Elder Care, all spreading similar messages about grandparents' rights and the tragedy of family alienation. Each account lasted days before vanishing, replaced by new ones. Emma's first words should have been a celebration. Instead, when she clearly said "Mama" while reaching for me, I felt a spike of fear. Would Eleanor use this as evidence of favoritism? Would she claim I was turning Emma against Michael's family? Every milestone became tainted with anxiety. We discovered Eleanor had been attending a grief support group, presenting herself as a grandmother denied access to her grandchild. She'd rallied sympathy and support from well-meaning strangers who had no idea about the restraining order or her true motivations. Some group members had even written letters on her behalf. Michael found charges on an old credit card he'd forgotten to cancel, one his mother had access to from years ago. Small amounts at first, then larger purchases. Children's clothes in Emma's size. Eleanor borrowing a dog just to walk past their house is peak dedication to being creepy. Imagine explaining that to the dog owner. Yes, I need Fluffy for some light stocking. I'll have him back by dinner. Toys appropriate for her age. Eleanor was building a nursery somewhere, preparing for a granddaughter she couldn't see. The situation with Michael's family reached a crisis point when his father showed up unannounced. He stood on our doorstep, demanding we stop this nonsense and let Eleanor see Emma. When we showed him the evidence, the emails, the fake documents, the harassment, he accused us of fabrication. The confrontation ended with Michael physically blocking his father from entering our home. I started therapy to deal with the constant anxiety. The therapist validated our concerns, but also warned about the toll this was taking. Emma needed parents who weren't constantly in fight or flight mode. We had to find a way to reclaim our lives. Then came the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. A woman from Eleanor's online hate group reached out to us. She'd had a change of heart after her own daughter confronted her about the group's toxic ideology. She provided screenshots, member lists, and most importantly, evidence of Eleanor planning something she called the Reunion Project. The documents were chilling. Eleanor had been coordinating with other estranged grandparents to reclaim their grandchildren. They shared strategies for documenting false neglect, creating situations that would trigger CPS numerous investigations, and even discussed crossing state lines with the children. It was a playbook for kidnapping disguised as grandparental concern. We took everything to Ms. Rodriguez immediately. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was conspiracy. The lawyer's eyes widened as she read through the evidence. This changed everything. We finally had proof of Eleanor's intentions that law enforcement couldn't ignore. But Eleanor must have sensed the walls closing in. The harassment suddenly stopped. No more drive-bys, no more flowers, no more social media accounts. The silence was more terrifying than the constant intrusions. She was planning something. Michael's brother James called with a warning. Eleanor had liquidated some investments and closed several bank accounts. She'd also been asking family members about properties in other states, claiming she was thinking of downsizing. We knew better. She was preparing to run. We increased security measures again. My mother extended her stay indefinitely. We varied our routes even more dramatically, sometimes driving an hour out of our way. Emma sensed the tension, becoming clingy and fretful. Her sunny disposition dimmed. The private investigator we hired, a recommendation from Ms. Rodriguez, uncovered Eleanor's rental property 2 towns over, a small house with a nursery painted in pink and yellow. Emma's name was stenciled on the wall. Photos of Michael covered every surface, but none included me. It was a shrine to the family Eleanor wished she had. Inside the house, the investigator found something more disturbing. Detailed schedules of our movements, photos taken from distances, and a calendar marked with significant dates. Emma's doctor appointments, my work travel, Michael's business meetings. She'd been tracking everything, waiting for the perfect opportunity. We filed for an emergency hearing to extend the restraining order based on the new evidence. The judge, reviewing the materials, looked genuinely disturbed. The order was extended and strengthened. Eleanor was now prohibited from coming within 1,000 feet of any of us, including our workplaces. But paperwork couldn't ease our fears. Eleanor had shown she didn't respect legal boundaries. We needed a permanent solution. Michael suggested moving, maybe back to California near my family. The idea of running felt like defeat, but Emma's safety came first. As we researched neighborhoods and job opportunities, Patricia called again. Eleanor had reached out to her one last time, talking about setting things right and ensuring Emma had the proper upbringing she deserved. The conversation had frightened Patricia enough to record it. Eleanor's voice sounded calm, resolved, the tone of someone who'd made a final decision. We played the recording for law enforcement. Finally, they took action. A detective was assigned to our case. They began surveillance on Eleanor, documenting her movements and activities. The net was closing, but we couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Emma took her first independent steps on a Tuesday morning. She toddled from the coffee table to my arms, giggling with delight. My mother captured it on video while Michael cheered. For a moment, we were just a normal family celebrating a milestone. Then I noticed movement outside the window and my heart stopped. It was just a neighbor walking their dog, but the moment was ruined. This hypervigilance was destroying us. We couldn't live like this forever. Something had to give. Ms. Rodriguez called with updates from the investigation into Eleanor's group. The FBI had gotten involved, not because of our case specifically, but because the group's activities crossed state lines and involved potential kidnapping conspiracies. Our evidence had helped expose a larger network of dangerous individuals. Michael's family began to fracture completely. James and Patricia sided with us, having seen Eleanor's true nature. Stephanie remained torn, wanting to believe her mother was just a grieving grandmother. His father refused to accept reality, clinging to the image of the woman he'd married 40 years ago. We made the decision to move. Not out of state, we wouldn't let Eleanor drive us that far, but to a gated community with security. The house hunting process was surreal, evaluating properties based on sightlines and escape routes rather than school districts and kitchen layouts. During a final walkthrough of a potential home, my phone buzzed with an alert from our current home security system. Motion detected in the backyard. We watched in real time as Eleanor stood at our back gate, just beyond the restraining order's boundary, staring at Emma's playroom window. She stayed there for 30 minutes, perfectly still, before walking away. The security footage was crystal clear. She wanted us to know she'd been there. It was a message. Legal boundaries meant nothing to her. That night, we signed the lease for the gated community. The move couldn't happen fast enough. We began packing immediately, telling no one except my mother and the authorities about our new address. Michael's relationship with his father reached its breaking point when he discovered his dad had been funneling money to Eleanor despite her frozen accounts. The betrayal cut deep. Michael hadn't just lost his mother to her hatred. He'd lost his father to enabling. As we packed Emma's nursery, I found myself grieving the family we should have had. Eleanor could have been a loving grandmother, sharing traditions and creating memories. Instead, her racism had poisoned everything it touched. The moving day approached with a mixture of relief and dread. We'd hired a company recommended by the police, one experienced in discreet relocations. Every detail was planned to prevent Eleanor from following us to our new home. But 3 days before the move, everything changed. The detective called with urgent news. Eleanor had disappeared. Her car was gone, her house empty except for the furniture. She'd left no note, no indication of where she'd gone. But they'd found something disturbing in her trash. Printed maps to California, with my mother's address circled in red. My blood ran cold. We'd been so focused on protecting ourselves here that we hadn't considered she might target my family. I called my mother immediately, but the phone just rang. Again and again, no answer. Michael was already grabbing the car keys while I strapped Emma into her car seat. We had to get to my mother. The drive to her temporary apartment felt endless. Every red light an eternity. I kept hitting redial, praying to hear her voice. We pulled up to find police cars already there, lights flashing. My heart stopped. But then I saw my mother standing on the sidewalk talking to an officer. She was safe. She was okay. She'd been grocery shopping when Eleanor appeared in the parking lot. My mother, ever alert since staying with us, had noticed immediately and called 911. Eleanor had fled when she heard sirens approaching, but not before my mother got a clear photo of her license plate. The manhunt began in earnest. Eleanor was now wanted for violating the restraining order and stalking across state lines. Her photo appeared on local news websites. The woman who'd been so careful about appearances was now publicly exposed as a threat. spot. We moved into the gated community under police escort. The security team was briefed on the situation. Emma's new daycare, carefully vetted, implemented strict pickup protocols. We'd created a fortress, but at what cost to our daughter's normal childhood? Days passed with no sign of Eleanor. The detective assured us they were tracking her credit cards and phone, but she'd gone dark. The waiting was excruciating. Every delivery truck, every unfamiliar car in the neighborhood sent my adrenaline spiking. Then James called with news that explained everything. Eleanor had been staying with a distant cousin who lived off the grid in rural Vermont. The cousin, sympathetic to Eleanor's plight, had no idea about the restraining order or criminal charges. Eleanor had presented herself as a grandmother fleeing an abusive situation. Law enforcement moved quickly, but when they arrived at the cousin's property, Eleanor was gone again. She'd left hours before, somehow aware they were coming. Someone had warned her, but who? The answer came from an unexpected source. Stephanie called Michael, sobbing. She'd been feeding Eleanor information all along, believing her mother's lies about us being unfit parents. But when she'd learned about the attempted approach of my mother, something had snapped. She'd warned Eleanor about the police raid out of misguided loyalty, then immediately regretted it. I can feel the weight of betrayal crushing this family from every direction. Poor Michael, discovering his own sister Stephanie was feeding Eleanor information this whole time. That's such a deep wound when you're already fighting to protect your baby. Michael's conversation with his sister was brutal. Years of family dysfunction poured out. Stephanie had always been Eleanor's favorite, groomed to believe in the family's superiority. Breaking free from that conditioning was painful but necessary. She agreed to cooperate with authorities, providing Eleanor's burner phone numbers and possible hiding spots. We settled into our new home, trying to establish routines while staying vigilant. Emma adapted quickly, toddling around the secure backyard and making friends with neighbor children. Watching her play, I felt a fierce protectiveness. She would grow up knowing she was loved, valued, and perfect, exactly as she was. My mother decided to move permanently to our city. Having her close provided comfort and an extra set of watchful eyes. She found an apartment in a senior community with excellent security, joking that Eleanor had inadvertently brought our family closer together. The investigation revealed the extent of Eleanor's network. The online group had chapters across the country, all sharing strategies for reclaiming grandchildren from unsuitable influences. Our case had helped expose dozens of similar situations. We weren't alone in this nightmare. Ms. Rodriguez kept us updated on the legal proceedings. With Eleanor in the wind, they were building a case in absentia. The evidence was overwhelming: stalking, harassment, conspiracy to kidnap, mail fraud, and more. When caught, she'd face serious prison time. But weeks passed with no sightings. Eleanor had resources and determination. The detective admitted she was smart, staying off grid and avoiding patterns. They suspected she was moving frequently, paying cash, using aliases. Every lead went cold. We tried to maintain normalcy for Emma's sake. Her second birthday approached, and we planned a small celebration with trusted friends and family. No social media posts, no public announcements. We'd learned to be ghosts in our own lives. The party was perfect. Emma giggling over her cake, playing with cousins, being showered with love. For a few hours, we almost forgot the shadow hanging over us. Then Michael's phone rang. The caller ID showed Eleanor's old number, the one that should have been disconnected months ago. He answered on speaker, the detective having instructed us to record any contact. Eleanor's voice filled the kitchen, calm and cold. She wished Emma a happy birthday, said she had a gift that would arrive soon, and hung up before we could respond. The call lasted 12 seconds, but felt like hours. The gift arrived the next day, not to our new address, which remained secure, but to Michael's office. A package containing a silver bracelet engraved with Emma, and a note, "For my granddaughter's future. Blood will always tell." The message was clear. She could still reach us. She knew our movements, and she wasn't giving up. We turned everything over to the authorities, but the package had been sent from a different state using a fake name. The security footage from the shipping store was conveniently corrupted. Eleanor remained a ghost, but one who haunted our every moment. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those beautiful hazel eyes and said, "Love, Mama," in her sweet toddler voice. I held her close, breathing in her baby shampoo scent, and made a silent promise. Eleanor would not win. We would protect our daughter and build the loving, inclusive family she deserved. The war wasn't over, but we were no longer victims. We were fighters, armed with love, law, and determination. Eleanor had underestimated the power of a mother's protective instinct and a father's fierce loyalty. Whatever came next, we would face it together. As I left Emma's room, Michael was on the phone with the detective. There'd been a sighting 2 states over, a woman matching Eleanor's description, asking questions about private schools that accepted special circumstances students. The net was tightening. We went to bed that night holding hands, drawing strength from each other. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities to build our case and protect our family. Eleanor thought blood was what mattered, but she was wrong. Love was thicker than blood, and love would win. The detective's lead about private schools turned out to be solid. Eleanor had visited 3 different institutions, each time presenting herself as a concerned grandmother, researching options for her granddaughter who was experiencing cultural confusion at home. The administrators remembered her distinctly, an elegant older woman who asked pointed questions about their policies on maintaining traditional values. Security footage from the 3rd school showed Eleanor getting into a rental car with Vermont plates. The detective traced it to a small agency near the Canadian border. By the time authorities arrived, the car had been returned and Eleanor had paid cash, leaving another false name. Michael's father called that evening, his voice strained. Eleanor had contacted him through a payphone, begging for money. She claimed we'd frozen all her accounts unfairly, and she needed funds for basic necessities. He'd wired her $2,000 before thinking to call us. The transaction gave authorities a new lead. The money had been picked up at a Western Union in New Hampshire. We tightened our routines even further. Emma's new daycare implemented a photo ID system for all pickups. The security company added extra patrols to our neighborhood. My mother enrolled in a self-defense class, determined not to be caught off guard again. 3 weeks passed without incident. We began to breathe slightly easier, though never fully fully relaxing our guard. Emma was thriving in her new environment, making friends at the playground and chattering constantly in her mix of English and Japanese words. Watching her innocent joy made our vigilance worthwhile. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A motel owner in Maine contacted police after recognizing Eleanor from the wanted posters. She'd been staying there for a week under an assumed name, paying cash daily. When housekeeping entered to clean, they'd found the walls covered with photos of Emma and maps with various locations circled. Police surrounded the motel within hours, but Eleanor had already fled. She'd left minutes before they arrived, abandoning most of her belongings. Among the items recovered were detailed notes about our new neighborhood security protocols and shift schedules. She'd been conducting surveillance, learning our new patterns. Michael took time off work to be home more often. We installed additional locks on all windows and doors. The house that should have been our sanctuary felt more like a bunker. Emma picked up on the tension, becoming clingier and having trouble sleeping through the night. Ms. Rodriguez filed for an emergency injunction to freeze any remaining assets Eleanor might have hidden. The investigation uncovered several accounts under false names, though most were already emptied. Eleanor had been planning this for longer than we'd realized. Stephanie provided crucial information about Eleanor's possible contacts. There was a college friend in New Hampshire who'd always shared Eleanor's views on racial purity. The friend denied any knowledge of Eleanor's whereabouts, but surveillance on her property began immediately. We celebrated Emma's development milestones quietly at home. Her vocabulary exploded, mixing languages in the adorable way bilingual toddlers do. She'd point at birds and say Tori, then immediately add bird. Her joy in discovery remained untainted by the adult fears surrounding her. The next sighting came from a gas station in rural New Hampshire. Eleanor had stopped for fuel, paying cash as always, but this time she looked exhausted. The clerk noticed her hands shaking as she counted bills. She was running out of resources and options. Michael's father finally accepted the truth when police showed him Eleanor's shrine photos from the motel room. The walls had been covered with pictures of Emma where my face had been cut out or covered with white stickers. In some photos, Eleanor had pasted her own face over mine. The visual evidence of her obsession broke through his denial. We received word that the FBI had officially taken over the case due to the interstate nature of Eleanor's flight and the connection to the larger grandparent kidnapping network. They assured us this meant more resources, but also warned it might take longer to resolve. Emma's second word in Japanese was daijubu, it's okay, which she'd say while patting our faces when we looked worried. Her emotional intelligence astounded us. Even at 2, she sensed when we needed comfort and offered it freely. The college friend cracked under FBI questioning. Eleanor had indeed stayed with her for several days, but had left after the friend suggested she needed professional help. Eleanor had ranted about her stolen granddaughter and her son's betrayal. The friend provided Eleanor's latest burner phone number. Tracing the phone led authorities to a campground in Vermont, where Eleanor had been living in a cheap RV. They found evidence she'd been there recently. Fresh food in the refrigerator, Emma's photos taped to every surface. But Eleanor herself was gone, having fled just hours before. Among her belongings, investigators found something chilling: a detailed plan to approach Emma at various locations, complete with backup strategies if intercepted. She'd researched our new routines extensively, identifying potential vulnerabilities. One note read, "Park on Thursdays, 10 a.m. Grandmother usually stays in car." We immediately changed all our routines again. The park visits stopped. We found new grocery stores, new routes to everywhere. The constant vigilance was exhausting, but the alternative was unthinkable. Patricia called with news that several family members had received letters from Eleanor. This whole investigation turning into an FBI case is incredible. Emma saying daijubu to comfort her worried parents while this grandmother literally cuts their mom's face out of photos and pastes her own face in. That's the most twisted thing yet. She'd written rambling missives about being persecuted for loving her granddaughter, claiming we'd poisoned everyone against her. Most relatives saw through the manipulation, but a few wavered, wondering if we'd been too harsh. Michael spent hours on the phone with family members, sharing the evidence of Eleanor's escalating behavior. The photos of her shrine, the kidnapping plans, the Reckist group memberships. Slowly, even the holdouts began to understand. His father apologized for enabling her for so long. The weather turned cold as November arrived. Emma needed new winter clothes, but I dreaded taking her shopping. Every public outing felt like exposure. We ordered everything online, had groceries delivered, lived like hermits in our gated community. Then Eleanor made her final mistake. She approached Stephanie at her apartment complex, desperate for information about our new address. Stephanie, finally free from her mother's influence, immediately called 911 while keeping Eleanor talking. She managed to stall for 12 minutes, pretending to consider helping while police surrounded the area. Eleanor realized the trap too late. As sirens approached, she tried to run but found herself surrounded. The arrest was swift and without incident. The woman who'd terrorized us for months looked small and fragile in handcuffs, her carefully maintained appearance finally cracking. At the police station, Eleanor's facade crumbled completely. She ranted about her rights as a grandmother, about the contamination of her family line, about how Emma needed to be saved from my influence. The officers recorded everything, building an airtight case. The FBI discovered the full extent of Eleanor's activities. She'd been in contact with 12 other grandparents from her hate group, sharing strategies and encouragement. Her arrest led to investigations in 6 other states. Our case had exposed a network of dangerous individuals targeting mixed-race families. Michael and I sat in Ms. Rodriguez's office as she explained the charges: stalking across state lines, conspiracy to kidnap, mail fraud, identity theft, and multiple violations of the restraining order. Eleanor faced serious federal prison time. There would be no probation this time. We attended the arraignment, needing to see for ourselves that Eleanor was truly in custody. She looked at us once, her eyes full of hatred, before her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. She pleaded not guilty, but bail was denied due to flight risk. The family began to heal. Michael's father visited, holding Emma for the first time in over a year. He wept as she showed him her favorite toys, chattering in her sweet toddler voice. Stephanie started therapy to process her role in and enabling Eleanor and work through years of ingrained prejudice. Emma remained blissfully unaware of the drama surrounding her. She continued to grow and thrive, her personality shining brighter each day. Her favorite game was pretending to cook, mixing invisible ingredients while narrating in both languages. The trial date was set for 6 months out. Ms. Rodriguez assured us the case was solid. Eleanor's own documentation would convict her. The FBI had her emails, the hate group posts, the stalking photos, the kidnapping plans. She'd created her own paper trail of obsession. We slowly began to reclaim our lives. First, a trip to the park without looking over our shoulders constantly. Then, dinner at a restaurant where Emma charmed the staff with her bilingual chatter. Small steps toward normalcy. My mother decided to make her move permanent, finding an apartment 10 minutes away. She became Emma's regular caregiver while we worked, filling her days with stories, songs, and unconditional love. The grandmother relationship Eleanor had poisoned, my mother healed. James and Patricia became regular visitors, determined to show Emma that not all of Michael's family shared Eleanor's views. They learned basic Japanese phrases, brought diverse books, and celebrated Emma's multicultural identity. The family Eleanor had tried to divide was reforming without her. 3 months into Eleanor's incarceration awaiting trial, we received notice that she'd agreed to a plea deal. 25 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 15. She'd be in her 80s before any chance of release. The nightmare was truly ending. We attended the sentencing. Eleanor stood before the judge, finally looking her age. Her lawyer read a statement claiming mental illness and requesting leniency. The judge reviewed the evidence, the photos with my face cut out, the detailed kidnapping plans, the Raxist group involvement, and upheld the plea agreement. As guards led Eleanor away, she turned to look at us one last time. The hatred was gone, replaced by something hollow. She'd lost everything in pursuit of a twisted ideology. Her son, her family, her freedom, and most importantly, any chance of knowing her granddaughter. That night, we held Emma extra tight at bedtime. She patted our faces with her little hands, saying, "Daijubu, it's okay." And finally, it was. 25 years in prison means Eleanor won't be bothering anyone until Emma's probably graduated college and has kids of her own. Thanks for reading this story with me.